Dubey sir, you can unmute and start.
Okay. So good morning, friends. It's a pleasure to be back again this Sunday. And our speaker this morning is Mr. S. Gopalan. Mr. Gopalan doesn't need any introduction to before this group because he's well known. He has spoken even earlier. But I just want to mention that his association with Valley School and Krishnamurti teachings has been for more than 4 decades. He's a very good speaker, as we all know. And I want to extend a very warm welcome to him and also thank him for uh, accepting our invitation to speak before this group. Mr. Gopalan is going to talk to us on reverse engineering. So, for those of us who are not engineers, they should be intimidated. This is a critical tool for understanding. Uh, Mr. Gopalan knows uh, the format. He can speak for as long as he wants, and then it will be open for questions and answers. So, sir, please go ahead, unmute yourself, and you can begin now. Thank you once again.
Namaste, everybody. First of all, I am not an engineer, and this is not a lesson in engineering. I have just borrowed a term from engineering to make my point. So there's no need to be intimidated.
Okay.
I'm sure many of you must have heard of this town called Ludhiana in Punjab. A very interesting phenomena if you go to Ludhiana. There are many workshops in that town. You can take any machine to any of these workshops and they have the capability to take it apart to every single component, then look at those components and make another machine which will do work just as well. And if you want evidence of this, you just have to see the sewing machine of any roadside tailor. It will not be one of the branded models. It will be some unknown brand made in Ludhiana. So they have this capability to take apart anything and replicate it. Now, replication is not copying. It's a new invention, although the end product may be the same. And I think this is something that somewhere in our discussions we've missed out. In Krishnamurti circles, you hear a lot about repetitive action, mechanical action. But is there really anything such as a repetitive action? This is part of what I am trying to raise today. So most of us know how to make a cup of tea. You heat the water. When it comes to a boil, you add the tea leaf, you give it 2 or 3 minutes, strain, add milk and sugar. Whenever you make a cup of tea, the process is identical. Is it a repetitive process, or every time we make the cup of tea, it's a new process? Can a human being ever be repetitive and mechanical? Because the human being is changing continuously, moment to moment to moment. So it's never the same person doing the act. So how can there be this quality of repetition? The word repetition and mechanical, these have come from the industrial age. When we see a machine, you put on the switch and it goes on working again and again and again without getting tired. And we bring that simile to the human mind. But a machine is not capable of attention. A living being, and particularly the human being, is capable of attention. So when attention is given to something, it's the human being in his entirety who's participating. And that's a dynamic human being. Therefore, is not every moment actually new? There is no such thing as repetition, is there? So learning is ever new. And reverse engineering is simply a technological name from engineering, which implies that there is complete attention to what is being observed, does it not? Now, in his talks, Krishnamurti very often gave the example of the invention of the jet engine. And what he said in one of those talks was, that is how the jet engine was discovered. The man who discovered it understood completely the internal combustion machinery, that is the piston and all the rest of it. And he said there must be something more. He was watching, waiting, listening, and he came upon something new. Now, was this not an example of reverse engineering? The man understood the piston engine process completely, and then understanding that, he invented something new. So there was no repetition in that. Krishnamurti has also at a different place asked, what is there to learn? Which initially sounds very, very contradictory. But if you really look at it, we always assume that learning must have an outcome, and that outcome has to be knowledge. Knowledge is accumulative. Therefore, unless there is knowledge resulting from that process, we think learning is not happening. But to go back to that example of making a cup of tea, every time we make a cup of tea, is there not a learning that is actually happening? Because the circumstances are dynamic and changing all the time. So long as attention is there not learning? Does it depend on a variation of the activity and the object for learning to happen? That brings us into this whole culture today of we want variety in everything. I think in a sense that's a wrong turn, particularly in education that we have taken and which we are encouraging with disastrous consequences. So is not all learning really a rediscovery of knowledge that already exists? Now, may not agree with this, but I would like to just go off track a little bit. Is there such a thing as innate knowledge? We think knowledge comes through the process of experience. But is there something called an innate knowledge which exists? Because if according to this whole quantum physics, energy manifests as matter, that manifestation is within a framework of a certain memory. Oxygen has this fixed pattern. Nitrogen has this fixed pattern. This knowledge must exist before the manifestation happens. That means this knowledge must be existing in the energy itself. And therefore, all knowledge of the universe must already be existing in the energy itself. To that, the human being adds his knowledge of experience, which he identifies with himself. So there is innate knowledge and there is also this accumulated knowledge. So is there any new knowledge ever discovered? So what is there to learn? All knowledge already exists. It's only to be rediscovered. So the process of learning is facilitated by observation. Now, when something is involved and complicated, this process of observation can be facilitated by somebody who has an insight of the whole issue, who breaks it down into steps. For example, in many of his talks, Krishnamurti used to break down the process of desire. Typically, he would say, you see the shirt or the dress or the sari or whatever it is in the window, then you go inside and touch it, which is seeing, touching, contact. From that contact sensation, then thought comes in and says, how nice it would be if I have that blue shirt. Thought creates the image of you in that dark blue shirt or sari or whatever it is. At that moment, desire is born. Now, is Krishnamurti giving us information about the process of desire? he makes clear again and again and again in every talk that his talk is not a lecture. It is not giving information. So what is he doing in this process? By breaking down the process of desire into these components, is he not facilitating the listener to understand these components and get the insight which Krishnamurti himself had about the whole process of desire? Is this not reverse engineering? Step by step, he takes you through the issue, but the objective is the listener has to see for himself. In that only is there learning. Now, from that, I would jump to a larger question. Does all learning involve such a process of reverse engineering? It's fairly easy to see this in the outer world, but we always think that it's not the same in the inner world, and we assume there must be another way of learning in the inner world. But is there any other way of learning except to see for oneself, whether it's the outer world or whether it's the inner world? Which means reverse engineering has to take place in the outer and the inner for learning to happen. So then the question comes, what is the role of a teacher in this process of facilitating reverse engineering? Now, Krishnamurti is one of those unique seers who has negated all help in this discovery of the inner. No guru, no teacher, etc., is something he has said again and again and again. Why did he say this? To quote a talk he said in 1983, he said, there is no help from this person. And in another talk in 1985, he made an interesting statement. He said, you must really become helpless to find the real thing. If you are helpless, actually helpless, that means there is no help whatsoever from anybody, from any book, from any person, from any environment, then you are in that state of real helplessness, then something takes place. Then you begin to see things. So, what does this not point to? Does it not point to the fact that when there is no help from outside, the only thing you can do is see for yourself, because that's the only way learning happens. And therefore, the age-old idea we have that learning comes from another person, whom we call the guru, is a fallacy. The guru is a facilitator who breaks down the process to facilitate the insight in the observer. But the observer has to see for himself and get the insight. Now, are not all seers, whether it is Krishnamurti, Ramana Maharishi, Sri Ramakrishna, all of them, did they not do the same thing? They facilitated reverse engineering. They did it through talks and discussions, similes, metaphors, parables, stories, even funny stories which we call jokes. All that was only meant to facilitate the listener being able to see for himself. Now we know that words are symbols. They stand for something which we are trying to communicate. And that's why the oft repeated statement of Krishnamurti, the word is not the thing. So in all these similes, metaphors, stories, there is a deeper meaning. And it is that deeper meaning which we want the listener to come upon. How does this inner deeper meaning come through? Is it a fixed meaning and only the same meaning can come to everybody? Or is it that every person who sees it every time may see it slightly differently? And therefore, it is seen again and again and again. The same story can give different insights at different points in time. depending on where the listener is. So coming upon this deeper meaning is the essence of reverse engineering. The listener listens to the story. As he listens, he lives it for himself, immersed in it. In this immersion, understanding comes. Understanding has always got to come. You can't come upon it. So understanding then must always come from the inside, never from the outside. The outside prop can facilitate the process, but understanding is always from inside. So is this what Krishnamurti implied when he said in a talk in 1978, you are not listening to the speaker. You are asking the question to yourself and finding the right answer without accepting any kind of authority, especially the authority of the speaker. So then the question arises, do seers facilitate this inquiry when people listen directly to them? Without a doubt. Do they also facilitate such an inquiry even when people don't listen to them directly? Now, in the Indian tradition, there are said to be 108 Upanishads, of which only about 20 are available. The rest have been lost. Upanishad itself means sitting down besides. So these are records of conversations that seers had with their listeners. And while at one level we can say that no book is holy because it's the expression of thought, that doesn't negate the truth, the statement of the mind of truth from where these statements came. They are only expressions of that. Now, Krishnamurti died in 1986, but even before he died, long before he died, his talks have been recorded, compiled, printed as books. They are maintained, available for people to study. So can we call Krishnamurti's collection the 109th Upanishad? So this has always been a question of doubt for me. Why in the Krishnamurti circles do we decry the benefit of study of similar works of any religion? Is it because Krishnamurti said, if you can read the story of mankind, which is a story of yourself, then you don't have to read a single book. And Krishnamurti made it clear that he had not studied any of these books. Have we just literally taken that statement without seeing the environment and the position from where he made that statement? And therefore we have said that study of any of these books is only tradition. But then study of Krishnamurti is also only a tradition. So have we misunderstood this whole legacy that we now have with us on tradition? I think it's a very, very misunderstood legacy, and that is skewing our understanding. Krishnamurti many times made this statement, please don't accept anything that the speaker says unless you see it for yourself completely. Deny everything everybody says, psychologically, especially the speaker. And this is why in many discussions, I always ask, why do we quote Krishnamurti? We can quote Krishnamurti as to facilitate a process, but then we can quote anybody else. It doesn't matter. The quote has no authority. It is only meant to facilitate the inquiry, but the inquiry has to come from oneself. Now, in India, with the weight of the culture and tradition that we have, are we able to do this? Or we have a deep conditioning that anybody who talks like this, we put him on a pedestal. And as Krishnamurti said, you put him on a pedestal and then you kill him, right? Are we doing the same? So tradition is tradition only if it is blindly followed, which means no inquiry. But if you are doing what he says, tearing apart what he has said to pieces and getting one's own understanding, then reverse engineering is happening, and which means that the listener is coming to his insight that he had. Is it then following tradition at all? In 1973, Krishnamurti made an interesting statement, which I have brought before this forum many, many times, but he made it only that 1 year. He said, wisdom is the daughter of truth and intelligence is the daughter of wisdom, right? And as I said earlier, I haven't seen any major discussion about this. Partly, I think it's because in our day-to-day interaction, these three words are simply interchangeable words: truth, wisdom, intelligence. We think they stand for the same thing. And therefore, we haven't had too much of discussion on this. But I'd like to put across a different viewpoint here. Please consider it and let's talk about it. I'm suggesting that truth is something that exists, it's dynamic. Wisdom is the expression of that truth. Now, any expression comes through the thought intellect. It's like a word. Just as the word does not mean the thing, the expression of wisdom is not wisdom. It's pointing towards something which we say is wisdom. So what we actually mean when we say wisdom is the expression of that wisdom. But that expression itself is not wisdom. That expression has to be re-engineered, reverse engineered, so that we reach that same state of truth. Now, this expression comes as talks, discussions, stories, similes, examples. And this is what is the basis of every scriptural text in any religion across the world. They all are expression of truth by that seer as he perceived it, and it has been expressed and recorded. The reader of it interprets it in his own way. And I am suggesting the transmission of the wisdom which the seer is expressing comes to the listener when the process of reverse engineering is complete and the listener sees for himself. So, truth is expressed as wisdom. When it is reverse engineered, it results in intelligence arising in the listener. So it's a process of replication. It's not following any authority or word because it has been said by somebody. Now, what is the difference then between the seers and laymen? There can be truth in any statement that is made by anybody. I think there is one major difference. A seer, whenever he talks from being rooted in truth. And therefore, his expression will always have that expression of wisdom. Whereas, when you are not rooted in truth, that is, when you're not a seer, you may make statements, but they don't have that depth. Just to give you an example, there was this movie called Wall Street, which came in after the 1978 crisis, 80 crisis. And this lead character in that Wall Street movie makes the statement, greed is good, right? But you can see that that statement doesn't come from any depth. It comes from a very superficial statement. And therefore, it's not worth examining too far. So this then brings me to a topic which I am talking about now. I might not have said the same 20, 30 years ago. And then that is this whole business of culture and heritage. Somewhere in our circles, this is all pushed aside. I ask, is that justified? culture is only what is actually being lived. There is no point in our saying India had a great culture 10,000 years ago. That's not culture, that's heritage. So I'm suggesting heritage is the expression of that culture as it is recorded. And therefore heritage is accumulated. Culture is only what we live. And if you see what we are living today on the culture which has just flown in from the West and blown out everything that we stand on. We are just running. We've been swamped with that flow. We're not able to question that. That's the culture that we have today. Therefore, there's no point in saying that we have a great culture of 10,000 years old. But the value of heritage is that it enables you to reverse engineer the insights and truths from where that heritage was expressed in those times. And if you just once examine the heritage of this land, it's an extraordinary heritage which is not found in any other culture, any other heritage in the world. But that heritage has to be reverse engineered, which means we have to come upon the deeper meaning of whatever is written there and not just take the superficial symbolical meaning and stop with that. How does one come upon this deeper meaning? Again, the listener, the reader has to come upon it for himself. Yes, others may point it out, but we can't depend on that. Just to give you two examples of this, Dashera just happened a short while ago. And all over North India, during Dashera, you have this effigy of Ravan which is burnt. And all these effigies of Ravan have one common characteristic. They have 10 heads. Right? Why does Ravan have 10 heads? Because the Mahabharata said Ravan has 10 heads. But if you inquire a little bit, is it possible for somebody in a human form to have 10 heads? How could he sleep? Right? So then you understand that in our heritage, in the heritage that the language that we use, the head refers to the ego. The heart refers to something deeper, feeling. So if somebody has 10 heads, does it not really mean his inflated ego is 10 times the normal? I am king. Nobody can defeat me. That kind of an ego. That's easy to understand because we have examples of it in our own lives. Similarly, if you look at any printed copy of the Bhagavad Gita, the cover invariably will be a chariot, Arjuna standing, and Krishna holding the reins. Is there a symbolical meaning in that? Krishna represents the Godhead, truth, insight. And Arjuna says, I take all my instructions from Krishna. I don't decide anything for myself. So is it not saying, let the individual take his direction from inside, which is not his own? Insight is insight. So the moment you look at these deeper meanings for yourself, these texts make great meaning. So the person who expressed it must have expressed it from such a thing. It's speculation, but that doesn't matter. That one's own insight is worth it for its own insight. It doesn't need a validation from anybody else. If that meaning which I attribute to it makes sense, then it makes sense. So my question which I would like to raise, or rather two questions I'd like to raise today, but anything else too you can raise. Have listeners of Krishnamurti blindsided themselves by refusing to read anything else or refusing to study anything else? Saying not necessary. And has this happened because they have accepted literally whatever they have heard Krishnamurti say without reverse engineering what they have heard and bringing the understanding to themselves? This is my question which I would like to raise today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gopalan. Very interesting discourse. A few points before we take questions. I think you mentioned about the state of not knowing. I think we all have experience in our life where, any issue that is before us, and we go on thinking, trying to find out or trying to find a way out of it. And a stage comes when we really don't know, and then something happens. So that is a very important stage for us to remember. Because normally, our intellect is something which never allows us to accept that I don't know. I can always have a way out. That's the problem. To your question, it's not directly an answer, but an anecdote I would like to mention before we go to Dinesh Waghmare, who has raised his hand. A very senior trustee of KFI talked to Krishnaji. This was told to me by Halyaji, Mr. Halyachari. And he said, "Sir, I have been with you for 40 years now, and I've heard most of your lectures. And if somebody answers, I can give similar answers, in fact, using the same words. So is there, what I say, is it not true?" Then Krishnaji said, "No, sir, what you say is true, but there is no truth in it because you are not living the teachings." So I entirely agree with you that if somebody says that you only read Krishnamurti and nothing else, I think you become blind. You don't want to see the light outside. And basically, Krishnaji never stopped anybody from doing anything. He left it entirely to us to find out what we are. And unless we have an open mind and put all our energy on observing something in detail, nothing will happen. Krishnamurti remains an intellectual discussion. I think I'll close here because there are too many hands raised now. We'll go to Mr. Dinesh Waghmare first, and then to, I don't see the name, Moto G, and then Ravi. Yes, Dinesh Ji, please unmute yourself.
Are you able to listen to me, sir?
Yes.
Sir, I'm very sorry, but today I'm having a very difference of opinion with Gopalan sir, because I'm myself is engineer, and I have done a lot of reverse engineering and developed many products in my career. So basically reverse engineering, basically you are having a known product available with you. And on that you do the coordinate measuring and all that, and you get the replication of the product. That is okay, what Gopalan sir said. But basically you are having a known product available with you and you replicate it. So how do you replicate? You take various coordinates and all that. You do the reverse, and that is called the reverse engineering. You of course you take down all products separately, and then you measure it, and then you make it. But whereas in case of spirituality, we are trying to find out or explore rather an unknown thing. So here is the difference, basic difference, that we are going for a finding out or exploring unknown thing. And whatever the teacher or whatever the guru or whatever he is saying, it is just to mature our intellect. In particularly, I also use the tradition. Then it is in Gyanmarg. What is the basic aim? Aim is just to mature the person intellectually, so that intellectual doesn't come in between or doesn't come as a hurdle, and he should give the way to the another instrument. Either here the intellect is used as an instrument, whereas that instrument should not become hurdle, and another instrument of awareness is to be used for the further journey. So there is a basic difference, sir. So that also I would like your views. So basically we are what reverse engineering, we are in reverse engineering, we are dealing with a known product, whereas here we are dealing with the unknown thing. And even Krishnamurti has also said the same thing, that freedom from, and here we are dealing with the freedom. So freedom from the known is attention into unknown. So freedom, we are looking for the freedom here. Whereas in reverse engineering, we are with the instrument, we are making our a product, same product, or yes, as you said, we also face the same thing. We replicate the product, but the product, you said that the process remains. You said that process varies. No, process remains the same. But yes, result varies with the environmental conditions, machine conditions, and other things. So we normally provide their tolerance. Whereas here, the entire what we are doing, we are trying to cut down, or we are just trying to remove our ignorance. So here there is a basic difference. We are dealing here with a separate thing altogether. Even this Arvind has used a different word for it. He has used the right word, synthesis. He has come out with a synthesis of yoga. So synthesis is the right word, not the reverse engineering. That's what my views are. So I think here the process entirely is different. And
Make it
so,
brief. Please, Dinesh, make it brief. Yeah.
okay. So right now this is enough. Let others talk, then I will again come into.
But Dinesh Ji, I would like to ask you, this whole thing of spirituality, right? Spirit means what? Something beyond the realm of thought intellect. Now, whatever comes in the realm of thought intellect is a product, it's an object. So when Krishnamurti explains the process of desire, those 4 steps that I listed out, those 4 steps are in the realm of the individual, the intellect. And therefore, that is the process of reverse engineering. Otherwise, why explain all this? Is it not for you to be able to see for yourself and then jump from that level of intellect? So are we projecting something as spirituality and then saying we're going to work for it? Or spirituality is only whatever exists when this thought ego is not active, which we can only imagine?
Sir, my views here are, whatever the Krishnamurti said, that is just for the beginners to understand what is happening with him. So that's just a beginning process. So he has to just for maturing the intellect. So he just to understand the structure of mind, and so that the intellect becomes mature, and then he can open his windows and go beyond. So basically, just to maturity of the intellect. That's all.
Right. Therefore, at the level of intellect, reverse engineering is valid. Now, what happens outside the intellect cannot talk about. But the intellect can reverse engineer. It can see that this is the process, and then it has to quieten down.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Gopalan. We will go to Durga Ji now. Please unmute yourself. I didn't see your name. I saw only the instrument you're using.
Yeah, this is a different mobile, sir. That's why.
Yeah.
Yes. Good morning, everybody, and happy Diwali to all of you also. Yeah. Good morning, sir. Gopalan, sir. Yeah, it's an interesting discourse, and you brought a lot of general observations and yeah, a lot of figurative speeches, figurative examples. Also, you quoted like Dashara, Ravan with 10 heads. And I think Ravan's 10 heads representative of his knowledge also, sir. That's what I feel. People say that, he's great knowledgeable in, the music and the yoga and even not yoga. I think different areas he had mastered and all. He was a very knowledgeable person. Maybe that also represented. And of course, if you have so much of knowledge, you have inflated ego also. I thought I should mention this point also here. And yes, sir, these are all my previous speaker, like Mr. Dinesh was suggesting. We have to use all these tools, all these things that are available to all of us, like this history, this culture, this tradition. And I think the wisdom and intelligence remains like, you don't get stuck with them. There are only small tools for you to go beyond, that's what I feel, that's what my take is on Krishnaji's teaching. because he is speaking from greater depths. Of course, he does say, don't read any books and all, read the book of your life. But I think unless and until we go plunge into the deeper levels of our own life's experiences and see and validate and observe them on a minute to minute basis, things don't fall in place for us. To comprehend what he's saying, from what heights and what depths he is saying, you really need to exercise all your options that are available to you, available with you. And definitely our the 10th 5 million year old heritage, we are we are definitely we are all these things are at our disposal compared to the Western people. So these Upanishads, and if you look at them deeply, they are not saying anything different from what Krishna is saying. But the thing is, where are we in them? Have we really gone up there? Are we really only, on the surface? Even if we are on the surface, so what? So maybe this is a beginning, and the beginning matters, and how it where it goes and how far it takes. It is nobody is it's not in nobody's hands. It's what matters is, are you really at it? Are you really exploring the deeper things, or are you really happy with the surface level of things? Or I think these are questions one needs to keep asking oneself. And I think it's a rather and he says, that you used the example of tools and engineering and all. I think of the tools we can use them, but when we leave them and when we start exploring, and he uses the word creation. Creation is the place, he says, you enter into that world of creation. That means you have to leave all these things, and then and there is only exploration, there is only questioning, there is inquiring, that's all. Where it leads, you don't even know about that. And the word I want to bring this word here, the creation is the word he uses. And the tools are basic tools, the tools which are available to us, they are the tools you have to use. But when you know how to leave them and go beyond them, maybe something else starts happening to you. That's all I have to say, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll go to Ravi now. Yes, Ravi, please.
Good morning and happy Diwali to all of you. Gopalanji mentioned 108 Upanishad and Krishnamurti as a 109 Upanishad. I doubt upon that if 108 Upanishad couldn't take us to the truth, how could this 109 Upanishad will take us to the truth? Because all this learning and studying those things makes me or anybody else rigid and have a feeling that I do know, I have reached, I have arrived, and that stops the inquiry. So I am in the state that I may drop Krishnamurti as well, because I failed that I am getting conditioned to him as well, and my inquiry is getting being in hurdles. And the second thing he mentioned about that wisdom is a truth, daughter of the truth, and intelligence is the daughter of wisdom. I feel that thought creates the intelligence and wisdom. I may be wrong, but in reverse engineering, I use a lot of thought and thinking process to understand and fragment all those whatever Krishnamurti or scriptures I never read though, but whatever comes in stories or form, I do just break it down and to understand them, and it helps me a lot, just like reverse engineering. So I use a lot of thought and thinking to understand that thing. Thank you.
No, I'd just like to respond to, I think there's a slight misunderstanding. When I said Krishnamurti, is he not the 109th Upanishad? I meant that it is a set of material which we have kept there on the bookshelf along with the other 108 Upanishads, right? They're all there, which means they are not part of us. That is one. The second error I think we tend to make is in these discussions, we tend to go to the other extreme and condemn thought and intellect completely. I think the strength of the human being is that he has the capability of thinking and intellect. we should not let that take over. That's our problem. But a very sharp intellect is necessary to frame the correct question. Otherwise, it frames the wrong question. So the intellect is a very, very powerful and valuable tool, but you don't let the tool take over. And somewhere in our practice, you see, human beings have the ability to calculate. Today, everybody wants even 2 plus 2, they want to use their the calculator on the computer, on their phone, right? We have the capability, but we are drawn towards letting the tool take over our living. Now, can there be that awareness and intelligently use the tool? That responsibility is always with the individual, is it not? So we should not condemn thought and intellect like that. I think it's an enormous tool that we have. That's the human opportunity. We have to build on it.
I think that is the only tool we have. Yes. Yes. Dr. Harshad Parekh. Yes, sir.
Yes. Are you able to hear my voice?
Yes.
Thank you, Dubey ji, and thank you, Gopalan ji. It seems to me that human beings, most of us, we really do not want to change, or in a deeper sense. And this is expressed by Duryodhana in Mahabharata. And he says, I know what is dharma and what is adharma, but I cannot live according to dharma. So already given up. And most human beings generally, because to change at the core, it means that it requires a very, very acute observation of our own mind, how it is working. So generally, when like children, they are curious about butterfly or a flower, and then we go to school and college and we acquire a lot of knowledge and we use our mind to understand the outside world. And that is where I think only when we become curious about what is happening within us, like what is this anger, how does it come, is it really possible to be free to observe it when it is arising? It is possible to look at the beginning of a thought. So only when such questions arise, or in another word, who am I? That kind of inquiry, when it comes, and then we become very silent and begin to look at what is happening within us. And in that, there is a real learning happens. And sometimes I mention the case of a rat with a short tail, and it's trying to catch its own tail, and it's going round and round. And that is a mechanical action. And the rat is so much involved in going round and round that doesn't see that there are people around and they are laughing. And then somebody touches the rat, and the rat goes straight and escape. So that kind of touching, when it happens to our mind, by reading Upanishad or Krishnamurti, and we begin to be very, very curious to look at our own mind, how these thoughts are arising. And that itself requires some kind of freedom, because Krishnaji says, freedom is at the beginning, sometimes he says. But I think that kind of freedom comes when we are reading something very, very interesting of Buddha or Krishnamurti or Upanishad, and then something happens within us and we begin to observe our own mind. And when we are able to do that, then we can learn. We don't need to read the books of Krishnamurti or Upanishad, but there is a book is being written every day in our own mind, and we begin to read it, and in that there's a direct learning, and it is a kind of a cleaning process which goes on day after day, and not gathering that knowledge, but observing So that kind of observation, a clear looking, or which Krishnaji calls choiceless awareness or intelligence, as long as it is not awakened, a person will keep on reading, keep on gathering knowledge, keep on asking questions, intellectual questions, and nothing can happen. So you are right, Gopalan sir, that we have to really look clearly what is happening within us, like fear, anger, jealousy. When we are curious about that, then something new begins to happen. So I have said enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Harshad bhai. Verma ji, Mr. Pradeep Verma, please.
Yes, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you. You see, one word which we all love so much is whole, W-H-O-L-E, whole. J.K. talked about it whole throughout his life. But every time we go on dividing things, and ultimately, probably, then we appreciate reverse engineering, another word that was new to me. I was thinking all the time, reverse I knew, but reverse engineering I had no idea. So we go on dividing things. We have divided life, which is whole, into biology, psychology, psychiatry, and number of disciplines, you see. And you see the result in society, what is happening when we have become specialized in different things. Then, so we are appreciating Ludhiana skill that way, knowing it too well that whole is greater than the sum of parts. And we are appreciating that way the components, you see, the components, and we know that human mind run by thoughts is always limited and picks up certain things only. So how to achieve whole, but through listening to Gopalanji, I could see that understanding can be achieved through mechanical mind also. He has given a lot of emphasis on intellect, fortunately today. Otherwise we have been as if it is something to be ignored, you see. So intellect, for the first time I saw that through that only, because inquiry, the real inquiry is through intellect only. So ultimately it's very comforting that way. But do we now, then you say that up to, you go up to that, intellect takes you up to that, and then you jump, as if we know that then the red litmus becomes white, or this thing green or something like that. There is a signal that now intellect goes and intelligence appears. So this is my ignorance I am talking about. If there is no that point, whether we know that point when I have to be, and who decides that my intellect is now up to this, and now intelligence comes in and takes me along. So these things are these are very important things. We have been using this word experiencing. Some people have been denying all that, there is no experiencing, feeling and all that, but experiencing the whatever messages come from the so-called outside world. How one experiences that, how one experiences that with cognition naturally. Otherwise, if it passes without my cognition, then it doesn't become experience only. So likewise, so many points are there. I'm struggling with that. For example, moment to moment awareness, moment gap, moment to moment awareness. You may be thinking that I am gripped by words, but that words only, and you say that the meaning, and one has to go beyond words, interlegre and all those things, but words are important. You see, man is a psychosomatic organism, we know, but we divide it into biology, psychology, and this thing like that. And in psychology, depth psychology. So we love dividing, and what that thing is dividing to make one understand and become whole. So this has been my dilemma all through. Are we doing reverse things to attain something, to become whole? Then seeing clearly, invariably I have heard this thing, everything becomes clear. Clear for what? Clarity for what? What relationship life has with it, the energy has with it. Ultimately, seeing clearly means what? If I can't see clearly, seeing clearly means action will follow through me. Definitely. That way I can understand. But simply seeing clearly per se has no meaning. It has to have some relevance to my life or to anybody's life or life in general. I am the world and all that thing comes. So these things are there in my mind. And the nature of time, is it cyclic? Is it never, it doesn't repeat? And all those things. So I think these are enough questions for me, although I had so many questions reading reading Gopalan Saab's book, Infinity, and that Infinity, Eternity, 1+1. A number of things I have to make clear, but today let others also ask questions. But these are my questions, and thank you very much if you can respond to that.
Verma ji, it's I think this is the first time I've heard you talk so much in the discussion, and it's great. I think you brought up a lot of issues. Each one of them can be the topic of an investigation for one Sunday. But very briefly, what I would like to I'll only make one point and stop. That example which Krishnamurti gave when he broke down the process of desire, and then he made that statement, when thought imagines itself wearing the shirt, desire rises. Now that is Krishnamurti's statement. Am I aware of this happening in myself? That's the watchfulness, and that's my life journey. Krishnamurti gave a pointer. He's only a pointer, he's only pointing a direction. I have to take the responsibility for myself. And I think in all this, because time is, you touched on time. Time is again something we talk a lot in these circles. Time comes into existence only when I come into existence, does it not? If there is no I, where is the time? So it all comes down to me understanding I. There's only that one thing. I just, not as information, but really to understand it so that I don't have that sense of I anymore. Again, that is my imagination, because people have said there is a state where there is no I. So this is the loop we are caught in. And I think it's just what you're, I think what I really like what you have done, you keep raising these questions. Those questions have to remain. We don't need answers for them, but the questions have to remain. And I think that brings its own insight at some point, wherever it is to happen.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll go to Mr. Shankar. Mr. Shankar Rao, please.
Good morning, Gopalan sir. I always wait to hear you because you're one of the speakers who speak sense. From what I understand is, as Krishnaji says, God is an idea. He has never said, unfortunately, I should say, that spirituality is also an idea, because there is nothing like spirituality. In fact, what is there is pure science. Science to understand that we are all living in the world of thought, and that thought is created out of words and symbols and pictures. And those words have some meanings, and we created those meanings. As he says, the word is not the thing. So these words, the pictures, these are creating the thoughts. And in reality, there's nothing there the moment. So we got stuck in the world of thoughts, world of words, world of meanings, world of pictures and meaning to those pictures, and world of actions, physical actions, and we gave meaning to every movement of the body, every action, and we call it, and we created something called world around all these things, and we are living in that. And because of and not only that, this so-called world of thoughts also created a lot of concepts called relationship, comparison, governance, country, religion, a lot of things, and we all are living in that too. As Waghmare Sahab said, freedom from the known. The once we understand that this so-called knowledge made of thoughts, words, pictures, meanings, we got stuck up in this, and because of that only there is suffering. And what is beyond this? The moment you understand what is beyond this thought-made world, so the moment you understand that and you start perceiving everything as it is, without the help of these words, pictures, and all that, the moment you understand as it is, as what's his name, Sharma ji, what's his name, blue shirt, yeah, Verma ji is asking, what is there to see clearly, sir? The whole so-called spirituality is there in seeing clearly only. Because we always perceive through meaning. When I see you, the moment I see you, if I see you are a human being, finished, thought has entered. The moment I see my body and I say, this is my body, the thought has entered. So the body never said, it is, I'm a human being, I'm a body and all that. It is the mind which is saying, this is a body, this is a human being. So, as Gopalan also said, Krishnaji said, this is a t-shirt, and when I see this, there's a desire. See, in spirituality, if somebody serious people are here, there are levels of understanding. If you are seeing the t-shirt, definitely there is a desire. Can you see the t-shirt as a cloth? It is only a cloth. No, it is only a thread. No, it is only it is only clay. So everything in this world is only clay. The laptop, the human body, the animal body. Okay, though we live in relative world, knowing she is my wife, this is my computer, but that is for relative sake. But in fact, also you should know that there's no t-shirt, there's no body, there's no laptop, nothing. It's all coming from the earth only. So we can destroy the whole physical world with this is all earth. Coming to the mental world, we can destroy the whole thing, saying these are words and pictures, and we give meaning to those words, these actions, we give meaning to these actions. So there also we can destroy, because it's all created by human mind. So we eliminated the physical world, we eliminated the mental world. So what is left is only the answer to the Verma Sahab, seeing as it is. You may say, if I see as it is, how can I perform in this world? Sir, you continue to perform. This is a game. We are already in the PUBG game made of words, pictures, meanings. So in this so-called religion, relationship, this is all PUBG game. We are in economy, Zoom meetings, spiritual teachings, and all that is the PUBG game. We are already in the game. You play the game knowingly that it is game. The fact is, this is all created out of thought. And one more last thing I want to say is, Buddha stopped saying that sensation is everything, because at the time of Buddha, the science was not so evolved. But now we know the sensation is nothing but repulsion of electrons. And from that, a electromagnetic wave gets created and it goes to the brain. The brain decodes that electromagnetic wave and recognizes what that so-called sensation is. So there's nothing like sensations, only electromagnetic wave. And we experience, we perceive, we experience only electromagnetic waves. Though it appears to us, we perceive the whole world. If I perceive my wife, I perceive something. We don't perceive anything. The mind perceives only, the brain perceives only the electromagnetic waves. Thank you. I have taken a lot. And last thing I want to say, a quote. This world is an expression of God. Expression is not truth. As word is not the thing, word is the expression of the thing. In the same way, this world is expression of God. Thank you so much. Bye.
Mr. Shankar, just a quick response to a few things that you said. Yes, Krishnamurti did say that God is the creation of thought. But at the end of every set of public talks, he always brought this point that when thought has quietened down, that which is beyond thought, the immeasurable, the sacred, call it what you will, that enters. So To me, that is spirituality, that which is beyond thought. And do you need somebody to confirm to you that there is something beyond thought? I don't think so, because we all know there is something called a life in us. And when it's gone, we say it's dead. So there is something beyond thought that is self-evident. What I think we miss out to understand is that all the things that you said we are doing, breaking it down, eliminating physical, mental, one by one, is the process of thought dividing. And that will never reach that end. So can thought stop dividing and just do its function? It has a function. We can't eliminate thought. Thought has a function. But if you let it go into areas where it's not required to act, then we have the confusion that we have. And third thing I would like to point out is one of the reasons why we are caught in this where we are is actually the education we have had for the last 150, 200 years. We have, the human being is a head and a heart. Head is the intellect. Heart is what you said, relationship. That's not of the intellect. Feeling is not of the intellect. But our education has completely left out that quality of the heart, and it has only stuck to the head. Because it can't talk anything about the heart, it says don't talk about it, don't include it at all. And therefore, we have created this monstrosity where everything is intellect, and then that's a trap that we have got caught in. If you see that you are caught in a trap, then you will step back. But that's an individual journey. And why should we say that all millions of people should change? You change first is the task I would give myself. Change and see what happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gopalan. Yes, Dinesh Ji.
Are you able to listen to me, sir?
Mhm.
Sorry, sir, but still I am having the reservation about the word reverse engineering, which you have now introduced new word. Basically,
Forget about
reverse
word.
engineering.
You can leave
Yeah,
reverse engineering. We can talk other things.
No. There should not be any non-clarity, sir. It is used for the making new thing. Whereas, as you said, yourself said, we are talking here about the new change in ourselves or total transformation we are looking for. Or we are, and that is based on your experiencing and your cognizance of the change of state. So this word, I think, as we should not use for this word here. What do you have to say on this, sir?
No, I see there is I thought about this quite a bit before I used it. All right. At the level of intellect, right? This is all we can do, reverse engineer. The things you are talking about, which is beyond intellect, we can't imagine. Therefore, even in reverse engineering, if you literally stick to that example, you can open out a machine and replicate all the parts. That doesn't create a new machine. There has to be a particular order and sequence and intelligence with which that is assembled. That is not of thought, right? That balancing, if I call it, is something dynamic. That's the creativity that comes in. But you see, these things flow into one another. Creativity uses intellect. The expression of that creativity comes to us through intellect. So that is why at the level of intellect, I will go back to that example of Krishnamurti on explaining desire. He has broken it down into 4 steps and then pointed out that that moment when I imagine wearing the shirt desire is born, it's a statement for me. I need to experience it for myself. Only then reverse engineering drops away.
Thank you. We'll go to Dr. Harshad Parekh. Yes, sir.
Yes, I like to say something about the words. And as Krishnamurti says, word is not the thing, but words which come from clarity, silence, such words has certain thing. And when such words are read or listened by sensitive people, then those words can lead to nonverbal state. And that requires how one reads or listens to Upanishad or Krishnamurti. And another thing I like to say about the inquiry, if that is true intellect through words only, then maybe it remains at that level, but coming out from that word, that is the real seeing. I would say that the real seeing is the inquiry, not thinking about. So there is something apart from thinking and feeling within us, which Krishnamurti calls awareness or intelligence. So there is a way of, or there is a seeing clearly how these words are coming, how thoughts are coming. And as long as that has not happened in a human being, then there will be endless questions. But when it happens, then there is only looking, not learning. It's just looking, and that looking or seeing is the action. So, okay, I have said enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Harshad bhai. Thank you. Yes, Mr. H M Shiva Kumar, please unmute yourself. Mr. Shiva Kumar.
Yeah. Am I audible, sir?
Yes.
Yeah. Very, very nice talk. In fact, the way you related to truth, wisdom, and intelligence. And for me, one aha moment was like, when you said that innate knowledge, which is already there, and we are not creating any new information out of that. Okay, it's only like we are extracting and trying to give some shape. Then there's tremendous innate knowledge. That was very, very interesting aspect. But at the same time, I also had the thought, when we say innate knowledge, is it that knowledge which is there in the nature, okay, which is already there in it? Is it in the form of the way we know knowledge as such? Or is it the intelligence that is working in that nature with the knowledge, and whatever we are trying to do is we're trying to only extract the knowledge aspect and leaving aside the intelligence aspect? I don't know whether I made it very clear with my question. Okay, my question is mainly with that innate knowledge which is there already in. So can you say something about that, sir?
There are just 2 points I would make. One is that every newborn from any dimension of life, plant, animal, insect, it knows how to grow and survive and flower, right? It's born with that. That's not information. That's one example of innate knowledge. The other is that today we learn from science that energy manifests as matter. To manifest in a form as matter, there has to be a structure. That is why whenever energy comes in a particular structure, it is oxygen. So that information has to be present, and it has to be present before the matter is formed. That means it has to be present in that energy itself. It can't exist anywhere else. Therefore, all knowledge must already exist in the energy itself. I mean, this is an argument, but I can't see any other way of explaining it for myself.
Thank you. Yes, Verma sir.
Yes, sir. Just a small thing, because you talked about, you exemplified this JK's words, desire, this into 4 components. I will say desire itself is enough, because the whole market is the factory to find out what is innate as desire in human beings. So it's itself, this desire itself, you go on dividing into components, it is almost unending. And another, Gopalanji, I'll just read one thing from your statement in page number 17, 1+1. In the moment of experiencing, when thought is dormant, experiencing this, I take it as one thing. Then you put so many conditions. In the moment of experiencing, when thought is dormant, first condition, there is only the present, and other, that is, in the present, there is no time with its beginning and end. Eternity, according to the dictionary, means time without end. So, when, as if we are seeing all this happening right in front of our eyes, you see, experiencing, while experiencing, whether man comes across these things or questions these things, there should not be a thought, thought is dormant or not, only the present is there. Even if any one of these things comes, probably experiencing will be not there. The fresh experiencing.
Very true.
Any one of these things. Thank you.
Very true. So all these statements are made outside that world of experiencing. You are not in that state of experiencing when you are making these statements, right? That's the thing about all writing. But this fact that when you are deeply involved in something, you don't know that you are involved is a common experience for everybody. And I think here we need to segregate between thought and brain. See, thought can't function unless there is a brain. But can a brain function and thought not rise? They are not synonymous. They are not interchangeable, right? And we have the experience of our own sleep. When we sleep, and there are states of deep sleep, when we have no dreams, thought is not functioning, but the brain is very much alive. So brain and thought are not interchangeable. I think it's the capable. See, even insight is a capability of the brain. Without a brain, you can't have insight. So the brain has many, many, many capabilities, but we are just stuck at the level of thought and trying to answer everything through thought and intellect. That, I think, is our problem.
Thank you. Thank you. Rightly said. Yes, Mr. Shankar Rao.
Yes, sir. Actually, I have a habit of muting the mic immediately after I speak. So I muted it. So I couldn't respond to sir. As Gopalan sir said, there is life. He also said, in the absence of thought, whatever is there, that is, Krishnamurti said, it is a God, or he has used what you call some other word. As just now, Gopalan sir himself responded to Verma-ji that in the state of seeing as it is, there is no life, there is no God, nothing. Okay. Only when you come out of it, then you will say, there is life, there is whatever is there. So it is all expression. Okay. So in the same way, when you are in the state of actual perceiving, there is no world, there is no physical world also. The only when you come out of it, you will say, yes, I saw something after coming out of it. Just now he said brain and mind. See, the brain only sees, that's all. The moment you recognize, recognizing is done by the mind again. The moment I see the door, the moment if I see actually as it is, there is no observer also here. There is no observed also. Only there is seeing taking place. The moment I recognize it is a door, the mind has entered. So the actual perceiving as it is happens only with the brain. And I want to read out one sentence from Madras Talk 1966 on desire. As long as thought does not interfere with desire, desire comes to an end. So desire is not wrong, but thought interfering with it creates the problem. This I am reading from Dr. Parchuri's collection book, Fundamental Unity. What's his book name? Whatever. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Sir, only one point I would like to raise with you here. You see, you said that when we are experiencing, there's no problem. When we are perceiving, there's no problem. It's only when we start expressing, there is a problem. That expression seems to happen in spite of ourselves. And that expression is what we call the jail, the prison that we live in. So aren't we really saying, can we understand freedom means not to be in the jail. So why is this intellect imagining and expressing when I didn't ask it to do it? You can't control it, right? Because that's again me. So how does one address this situation? This is the burning question that every human being has. Is it not?
Thank you. Thank you. I think we have come to the close of the session now. So I want to thank Mr. Gopalan for bringing out such an interesting subject for talk, which brought out so many questions and very interesting ones, of course. Next Sunday, we'll have Dr. Richa Sharma. She is professor in the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Bombay. So she is going to talk to us on Krishnamurti's message to me, be courageous. So I'll request all of you, if you're free, please do join and join us for this lecture next Sunday at 11 a.m. And
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you,
very
Gopalan
much.
sir, for being with us. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dubey sir. Thanks
Thank
to every participant. Modak, please end it.